The movie opens with the Duncan family, Will, Jen, and their daughter Catherine, celebrating Catherine's 16th birthday. Catherine, who loves playing softball, practices her throws with her dad. During dinner, she excitedly talks about her upcoming game, but her parents remind her to focus on school first. Confident, Catherine insists she can handle both. The scene shifts to a ruthless mob boss, Donnie Fetter, killing a man in cold blood. His young son, Danny, is terrified, while his older brother, Rory, joins them. It's Danny's first kill day, and Donnie hands him a gun, telling him to make the family proud. The next day, Will congratulates Catherine at her school after she wins her softball match and promises to buy her tacos for her win. On their way home, they talk about her future, with Will pushing for a law degree while Catherine argues she's aiming for a sports scholarship to help with expenses. They stop at a bakery, and while Will goes inside, Catherine notices strange cars pulling up. Suddenly, masked men force her out of the car and start beating her. Danny and Rory appear, revealing that Catherine is Danny's target for his first kill. Catherine pleads with them, but Rory insists it's about proving himself. Danny hesitates, but ultimately shoots her twice. Hearing the gunshots, Will rushes out to find Catherine lying dead. Rory flees, but Will catches Danny. Danny fights back but is arrested. Meanwhile, a devastated Will screams for help. At the hospital, Jen arrives, and they are crushed to learn Catherine didn't survive. A few days later, Jen tries to talk to Will, but he's distant and goes to see the prosecuting attorney. The attorney tells him the case is weak, and Danny might only get 7 years, or as little as 3 if he behaves. Furious, Will learns his own testimony is useless because he had a concussion and might be seen as hallucinating. At the hearing, Will, disillusioned, refuses to identify Danny as the killer, leading the judge to dismiss the case. Danny walks out free, cheered on by Rory, who tells him he can now do whatever he wants while Will watches them from a distance. Their father, Donnie, is also proud and says Danny is ready to take over the streets. That evening, outside a club, Will is approached by a prostitute, Luna, but he brushes her off. He spots Danny leaving the club, and in a secluded spot, Will runs him down with his car, breaking Danny's leg. Danny recognizes Will and taunts him about Catherine. Enraged, Will grabs Catherine's bat and brutally beats Danny to death. Will returns home, cleans the blood off his car, and hides his stained shirt under a hoodie. Jen notices something is off and questions him, but he excuses himself to take a shower, where he breaks down, overwhelmed by grief. Meanwhile, Rory meets his father, Donnie, who is displeased with him for bringing in less money than expected. Donnie gets mad at Rory for being disrespectful, revealing he does not like Rory that much. After Rory leaves his office, his friend, Zach, arrives with news of Danny's death. Shocked, they rush to the crime scene, but the police block Rory from seeing his brother's body. Zach calms him and the duo returns to their car. The next day, Detective Neil Chen visits Will to discuss Danny's death. When asked where he was, Will lies about taking a walk and Jen, shocked, supports his story. Neil passes them his card and leaves, suspicious of Jen's reaction. Afterward, Jen confronts Will, saying she doesn't want him to revert to his old ways. Will snaps back, reminding her of his past as a Marine, saying, "You mean, when my friends were dying and there were bullets around my head?" Meanwhile, Rory tells his friends he wants Danny's killer to suffer. Furious at their delay, he orders them to start with women seen at bar, hoping any of them may have seen the killer. Luna, who claims to see a man the night Danny died, is brought to Rory. She describes the man, and when shown a picture of Will, she confirms it was him. Rory prepares his crew for revenge. The next day, Rory ambushes Will at a cafe. Will dodges the attack and disarms Rory. He knocks out Rory's henchman, but Rory keeps firing. Will is eventually overpowered, and when he asks what Rory wants, Rory says he's out for revenge. Rory orders his men to kill Will, but Will fights back, forcing Rory to flee as a police car approaches. Rory grabs Will's wallet before escaping. Will rushes home, locking the doors, and tells Jen someone tried to kill him. She urges him to call Detective Neil. Neil, meanwhile, is at the crime scene of Rory's henchman when Will contacts him, asking for a meeting. Neil reveals he knows Will killed Danny and another man earlier. After reading Will's file, he realizes Will is a retired Marine with experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. Neil warns Will he's picked the wrong family to mess with, but Will pleads for Jen's safety. Neil walks away, telling Will there's a squad car outside and he'll be back tomorrow with more questions. The scene cuts to a thief named Dante, who shows up at his friend Roach's place to sell a stolen car. Roach is low on cash, so he gives Dante a bit of money and a load of guns to sell on the streets. That night, Jen demands answers from Will, and he finally admits he killed Danny because Danny murdered their daughter. Terrified, Jen wants to leave the city, but Will asks her to wait until morning so she can safely go to her parents. Suddenly, someone throws a bottle at the squad car outside their house, and as the officers drive off to investigate, Will and Jen panic. Just then, Rory and Donnie break into their home. Donnie, eerily calm, says Will has heard wrong about him, calling himself a good man. Moments later, he shoots Jen in the head. Rory holds Will back and taunts him to beg for his life. Will refuses, so Rory shoots him down. As Will suffers, Rory calls himself his executioner. When Will tries to get up, Rory shoots him again. After they leave, Will crawls to the phone and dials 911. He wakes up in the hospital, confused and panicking, wondering why he's still alive. Detective Neil arrives, calling him the Miracle Man. Neil gives him a choice, either stay dead for Donnie and his men or keep fighting. He leaves, and a nurse helps Will walk, but he spots a janitor's uniform nearby. Later, Will puts on the stolen uniform and sneaks out of the hospital dressed as a janitor. That night, he arrives at a hotel where Dante spots him, sensing something strange. The next day, Will withdraws money from the bank. Dante tries to talk to him, but Will ignores him. Dante then shows him an article about himself and mentions he knows about his trouble with Donnie's family. Dante offers help, and Will asks about the guns. Dante takes him to his room and shows him his stash. He reveals he has a grudge against Rory, who shot him a few years back. Will buys all the guns and asks for a car and jacket. Dante agrees to find him an untraceable car for extra cash. Next, Will is seen in an old car headed for privacy. He reaches outside the city and practices using the guns there. Being a Marine, he just needs to revive his skills, and within hours he regains his old skills. Meanwhile, Rory returns with money, but Donnie is still unhappy with the amount. Frustrated, he taunts Rory about Danny's death, suggesting Rory should have been the one to die. Angry, Rory storms out. That night, Will sneaks into Zach's place. A fight breaks out, with Zach gaining the upper hand initially. However, Will manages to get his gun and shoots Zach twice. Injured, Zach begs for help but only gives up Rory's location, the club called the Den. When Will points his gun, Zach tries to lie about having a daughter. Will doesn't fall for it and kills him. Neil arrives at the crime scene and arrives at Donnie's place, warning him about Zach's death. He advises Donnie to end the feud with Will, but Donnie refuses. Neil hints that the police could turn on Donnie's operations if he doesn't comply. Nervous, Donnie calls for Rory. Neil warns Rory that Will won't stop and suggests he lay low, but Rory isn't interested. As Neil leaves, Will secretly follows him. Meanwhile, Donnie orders Rory to kill Will. Neil arrives at Will's house, but before he can enter, Will takes him hostage. Inside, Neil tells Will he wants him to stop and that he informed Donnie about Zach's death to calm things down. Will, furious, says he'll only stop after he kills them all and turns himself in. Neil, realizing he can't change Will's mind, agrees to stay out of his way. Will warns him to back off and leaves. Meanwhile, Donnie angrily calls Rory, demanding to know why Will is still alive. He orders Rory to act like his son and get the job done. As Rory leaves with his men, Will, pretending to be drunk, takes down a guard and sneaks into Donnie's room. He tells Donnie that he feels nothing except for the pain of his daughter's death, then shoots Donnie in the head. Will grabs Donnie's phone, calls Rory, and tells him his father is dead. Rory returns to the club, unfazed by his father's death, and orders his men to hunt down Will. As they search, Will opens fire, leading to a shootout. Will takes one of Rory's men hostage, but Rory coldly kills his own guy. Will manages to escape and flees in his car, but he's been shot. Back at his hotel, Luna spots him and tips off Rory. Dante sees Will struggling up the stairs and rushes to help him. In the room, Dante realizes Will is badly wounded and helps remove the bullet just as Rory's car pulls up. After a tense struggle, Dante gets the bullet out, but Rory arrives outside screaming for Will. Dante helps Will fire back at Rory and his men. As the shootout intensifies, Dante and Will jump into Dante's car and escape under a hail of bullets. Rory and his crew give chase, leading to a tense shootout. Dante contacts Roach for help, and Roach agrees, telling his men to get ready. Dante lures Rory to Roach's garage, where Roach's men force Rory to retreat temporarily. Inside the garage, Dante thanks Roach, who panics when he sees Will. Before they can clear things up, Rory strikes again, and a fierce firefight breaks out. Roach manages to shoot one of Rory's men but is killed by Rory before he can finish the job. Will runs out of bullets, and Dante is shot while trying to cover him. Rory then takes down the rest of Roach's men. In the end, it's just Will and Rory. Rory tells Will he could forgive him for killing his father, but not for Danny, who was innocent. Will hides under a car, and when Rory gets closer, he attacks but gets shot. As Rory taunts him, Will grabs a screwdriver and stabs Rory in the neck, taking his gun. He watches Rory die slowly, but doesn't pull the trigger. After Rory dies, Dante, wounded but alive, flees as police sirens approach. Neil and his officers arrive, finding Will next to Rory's body. Will asks Neil to arrest him, then passes out. The movie ends with Neil saying, "I hope it was worth it."